Welcome back to the Memsql Developer Livestream. Last week we did a lot with database migrations, and that was really fun. The week before we had a failing unit test, and we're going to skip that again this week as well. I suspect that's going to come back to bite us. That's totally fine though. Today we get to dig into users and roles, user authentication. And we're going to, one of the biggest things that is still lacking in our site is login. When we log in, it just validates that we have a password, not what the password is or is that a valid account. And so we could look to mechanisms to authenticate against an external service like login with Google or login with GitHub. But we have a database. Let's log into the database. So that's what we'll do. It'll help us learn a whole lot more about users and roles within Memsql. And we'll get to dig into the authentication story and database migration story as well. So that'll be really fun. Let's dive in. So we start up our database with inside of a Docker container, and this works out really well. I love how simple this is. This is the blog post, Docker Desktop in 10 minutes, which you can find on the Memsql blog. And that works out really well. We just grab this Docker Compose file and we spin up our database. And here's our database right here. It's spun up and we are ready to go. So I created the database. Let's use that database. And now that that database is created, here's what we did last week. npm run db up inside the SQL folder, and it will go provision all of the content in our database. This is perfect. So we walk through all of the steps to be able to create the original table, to migrate the table into the new schema, and ultimately now we have all of our content. Now what we want in our admin interface is the ability to edit this content. But from our website, we don't want to edit this content. And in addition, we probably want an interface to be able to create the users that are allowed to do this. So there's kind of those three personas, those three roles. Now, in the case of the read-only users, we'll probably only ever have one, the website. But in the case of the other two, there may be lots of people who will edit the website, edit the product details, but shouldn't add users, and lots of people who can edit the product details and should have users. So let's go create those three roles and see how we can pull that off. So here's a terminal, and let's go look for our Docker container. Here's that Docker container. That's perfect. Docker container, Docker exec-it. We'll go into that container and we'll run bash. Now the cool thing is we're getting a second process inside this running container, and we're doing this so that we can get to the Memsql command line. Now we could have installed any MySQL client. We could fire up phpMyAdmin or use the Memsql Studio terminal for this. But this is really easy to be able to do stuff. So let's say use acme, select star from catalog. And here's our rows. That's cool. So now from this prompt, we can say get user. Let me go find my notes. Yeah, let's say create table T. We'll have just this table that we can play with to see if the user that we're going to create has permissions to insert content into this table. So that's great. Insert into T. Let's say values 1. Okay, now we have a table. Select star from T. Now we didn't do database migrations here. We'll want to delete this table after we're done. Or because we have that database migration story, we could just destroy the database and recreate it. This is, after all, a developer database. But let's take a look. Okay, select user. Now select user will tell me who I am. What we see here, I am root at localhost. Now I logged in from localhost. I could have logged in from another host, but I'm currently running as the root user. And when we logged into Memsql Studio, we used the root user with no password. So we know that that works just fine. We want to avoid that account, and in time, we'll definitely want to set the password to that account. That account can do everything, and that's not one of the 3 users that we want to create. Select user. Okay, so let's do that similar thing. Docker container list will remove all the Kubernetes ones. Here's our container, and let's get a second Docker exec-it. Let's get a second shell here. Now, I could just say memsql, and it would log in, but I don't want to log in as root, the user that's running this shell. I want to say as user foo, and prompt me for my password. What's my password? Bar? Nope. Foo doesn't exist. Foo can't log in, and that's what we expect. We haven't created any users yet, but now we have kind of a test bed to say, well, let's test creating these users. Let's test the permissions that they can get. Right now, foo doesn't exist. Okay. Create user foo identified by bar. So this identified by is the way we set our password in MySQL, and because Memsql is MySQL compatible, then it's the way we set the password in Memsql. We can definitely change it, and that's a very different way to do so. Create user foo identified by bar. Okay, so memsql-u foo-p, enter my password, bar, I'm in. Great. Select user. I am foo at localhost. That is perfect. So show databases. I don't see my database. Now that is use Acme, access denied, select star from catalog, access denied. That is as expected. We've given this foo user no permissions at all. We've just created the foo user. So, well, how do we give it permissions? Let's flip back over here to the docs. And what's really cool, we did that create user optionally at host, identified by a password. I can specify other details. In this case, we didn't. Grant. Here's how we give it permissions. Now in Memsql, like MySQL, I can grant user permissions and I can remove those permissions, but there's no deny. I can't give it any deny permissions, only grant permissions. But here's all the permissions I can give it. Select, insert, update, delete, yada, yada. There's a lot of them. And what's really cool is I can give them these permissions on a specific thing. So let's come back in here to our terminal. Oops, did I just close the terminal? I did. That's going to be really interesting. Let's go create that terminal again. Now we do need an admin terminal so that we can Minikube. If we were using Docker Desktop, we wouldn't need an admin terminal, but here's that. Let's split it again. Let's start there. Minikube Docker env -- shell PowerShell. Let's get the environment variables that we need to connect back to Docker. There we go. Let's set the environment variables here, and we'll set them here as well. Perfect. Docker container list. Take out the Kubernetes ones. There we go. Docker exec-it, that one, bash. Okay, Memsql. Select user. Okay, so back to root. Docker exec-it, bash. Memsql -u foo -p, prompt me for the password. My password is bar. Okay. Show databases. Okay, so now we want to give it permissions. We've created the user. Show grants. Well, this is showing grants for myself. That's okay. Show grants for foo. Well, we notice that it's the user at the host. And in this case, % means all hosts. So let's say foo at star. So what are the grants that it gets when it comes from anything? Well, grant usage. It can log in. Perfect. Well, let's grant it some things. Grant select, insert, update, delete on acme.t to foo at %. Cool. So now we've given it the permission to, in this one database, access this one table in these ways. Select, insert, update, delete. Show databases. I now see I have my Acme database. Use Acme. Show tables. I can only see that one T table. We know that there are more tables in this database, but those are the only ones I have permission to. Select star from T. Great. Insert into T. I want to insert an I, values 2. Select star from T. Oh, spelling. Select star from T, and I can see that I can do those inserts and selects. That's perfect. So for our read-write user inside the catalog, this is ideal. Well, what if we only want to do read-only? Well, we've granted these things. Show grants for foo at %. They have these two things. Well, let's revoke. Revoke all privileges. Privileges is hard. Let's go grab this. Grab this from the notes. Revoke all privileges. Okay. Show grants for foo at %. And now I can only log in. Show databases. Nope. Show tables. Nope. Okay. Grant select, insert, update, and delete on acme.t to foo at %. Now, why do I need these quotes around it? Well, because in regular SQL, that means something else. But putting it in quotes, now I can get what I want. Same thing with at. Okay, use acme, select star from T, and we have our permissions. Well, I don't want select, insert, update, and delete, so let's revoke insert, update, and delete from on acme.t from foo at %. Okay, show grants for foo at %. Yep, I can only do select. That's perfect. So select star from T, that still works. Insert into T, values 3. Hey, that failed. That's perfect. So we've got the sense of how we create users, how we assign permissions to users. Now that's interesting, but in our case, we want to be able to assign permissions to lots of people. And doing the grant on each person is interesting, but let's do grants to roles and then build that role up to have all the things. Okay, so let's say, let's revoke all privileges to this user just so that we aren't spilling things. Yep, now we only are able to log in. Show tables. Nope. Okay, creating a role. Create role, the role Now we have a role. Show roles. There's our role. Now as we start looking at roles, we can create a role. We can grant two roles. We can show groups for roles, show users for roles, show the roles. But we can't grant a role to a user. We can only grant a role to a group. So we have this kind of three-step process. We have roles, we have groups, and we have users. Users can belong to groups, and groups can belong to roles, but users can't directly belong to roles. That's totally fine. Let's go create a group. So here, create group, the group, show groups. Perfect. We have a group. Show roles for group, the group. There are no roles yet. Show groups for role, the role. Yep, there's no groups in this role. Okay, so let's add this group to this role. Grant role, the role to the group. Okay, now show groups for the role. I have the group in that role. Show roles for the group. Yep, now the group and the role are connected. Perfect. Show users for group, the group. No users yet, so let's do that. Grant group, the group to foo at %. Okay. Show users for group. Yep, foo is now in the group. Foo has two active connections. This one and the one that we closed. So there we go. We've got users for group. Show grants for foo at %. Now we have the user, and we have the user in roles and groups, but none of the roles have any extra permissions. So ultimately, the user doesn't have any permissions either. Show tables. Nope, can't get to it. Okay, so we did grant, select, insert, update, and delete to foo at %. And that's how we assign the permissions to that user. Let's say to role, the role. Grant. To. Nope. So how do we grant to roles? Grant to user a role. Okay. I had that syntax wrong. Grant select to, select on acme.t to the role. Okay. Show grants for foo at %. And, show grants for role, the role. Nope, that wasn't it. Grant select on acme.t to the role. That should have worked. Let me go copy my notes and see if I just typoed it. Okay, show grants for the role. For role. The role. Nope. Show grants for foo at %. Okay, there we go. We can select, insert, update, and delete on this table to this via roles and groups. Perfect. So now we can use Acme show tables. I still see only that T table. Select star from T. Insert into T. Values 3. Select star from T. Yep. I'm able to insert, update, delete based on that role. So users are parts of groups. Groups are parts of roles. And I can assign permissions either to users or to roles. That's perfect. So as we go create this collection, we have here in our SQL project the migrations. So let's come back in here, and now we've done a db migrate up. Let's do npm run db migrate create. Is that what I called it? Package JSON. db create change. Not that one, that one. db create change. Users and roles. Nope. Groups and roles. Let's say roles groups. Okay, that works. So as we create this migration, it's going to create this new roles and groups up and roles and groups down. Here's up, here's down. So in the up, we want to create these three sets of migrations. That'll be perfect. Let's say create role catalog read only. That'll be our role that only does select into the catalog table. Create group catalog read only, and grant role catalog read only to catalog read only. Okay, so that will create the role, create the group, and put the group in the role. Grant select on acme.catalog to role catalog read only. Perfect. Now we haven't created any users yet, but this creates that initial catalog read-only group. Now we do want 3, so should we put these 3 in separate migration? Should they be in the same migration? In this case, documenting all of the starting roles and groups at one time seems like a good move, so let's put them here together. Catalog editor. So catalog editor, then we'll be able to change the catalog. We'll create that role group, add the role to the group, and give it select, insert, update. Do we want to give it delete? We may change our mind on this, but yeah, let's give it delete for now. Okay. Now we also want to do a user editor. The user editor will allow us to create and delete users and add them to these groups. That'll be the user that'll allow us to do user administration. So, well, what do we want to grant to it? Actually, let's say user editor, because otherwise we'll forget. And let's create the down script here as well, because, yeah, forgetting. Drop role there, drop group there. That will drop all the permissions nicely. Let's drop there and drop there. Let's drop there and drop there. Okay, so we still haven't figured out all of the particulars of what permissions, but now we've got this starter piece that we can play with. So back in our console, db npm run db up. That will put in all of the changes that we've got. Yep, it looks like that worked out just fine. Npm run db down. Let's do down, and I don't think we've built this yet. Nope. So let's go build a command that will allow us to do that. Package JSON. Here's db reset. That's close. Let's say db down, db migrate down. And by default, db migrate down will only go one commit, one migration. So npm run db down, and it pulled those three things back out. Perfect. So we know our migration works. We're able to create these roles and groups and delete these roles and groups. We still have some investigation, though, to figure out, well, what does this role need to do to be able to get at this user editor? Okay. So here in the privileges, let's look at Grant. We have select, insert, update, delete, drop, reload, process. There's this one called create user. Where is it? There, create user. Now I see create database, drop database, create pipeline, drop data pipeline. Is there a drop user? There isn't. In MySQL, the create user also has permission to drop users. So that'll work. Create user. Let's go do some experiments with create user. So let's say grant create user to foo at %. Oh, I did not give it a thing. Grant create user on acme.star to, well, I can't say you can only create users in this one database because users aren't specific to a database. So rather, I need to say create user on everything. Now, I'm not really thrilled at giving website users that much power, but yeah, that's what it is. So create user. So now that I can do that, let's say create user bar identified by bar. Yep, it looks like we did that. Show users. Here's bar, and it's ready to go. That's cool. Now, one of the things that create user can do is now can bar do that? One of the pieces is to foo with grant option. With grant option allows me to say, and you can pass this on. You can apply the create user to other people. And I'm going to need that for users because anyone creating a user who gives them admin permissions needs to be able to give them ability to create user. Okay, so that's that magic sauce in here for our grant statement. We want to grant create user on star.star to this user editor role with grant option. And the grant option allows us to then allow those users who are created to create users if we give them the chance to. That's cool. So back here, let's do a db npm run db down. Oh, it looks like we already did that. db up. That will apply this migration. Yep, we've got those three roles in place. Npm run db down. They are all gone. That's perfect. Okay, so now we've got the ability to, we've got these roles and groups. Let's create some default users. When I do a db migrate up, I kind of want, one account that I can use for all the things. Now, I don't like that we need to bake the passwords in here, but yeah, we need to bake the passwords in. Npm run db migrate create. The fact that I have to look this up says I didn't name it very well. db create change. Let's call this migrate create. db migrate create. I want to create a default users users default. Users first. That works. Now we have a new migration. In this new migration, here's this roles first. Nope, that's the JavaScript to run it. Here's this users first up or down, and here's these users first up. So now let's go create a user in each piece. Well, maybe one admin user that can do both catalog editing and creating users, and then another one, a website user that is read-only. So create user website identified by password. Okay. Still not thrilled with the passwords here, but that's how you do it. So fragile passwords committed to source control, change on first use. Okay. Create user website identified by password. Let's also create user admin identified by password. Yeah, fine. Grant group catalog read only to website at %. So that'll be the read-only group. Now let's say catalog editor to admin and catalog and also user editor to admin. Do they need to also have read-only if they have editor? That's debatable. We could say let's definitely give the admin user all the roles. Yeah, that would work. Now the cool thing is once we drop the users, we don't need to enroll them in the groups. We just need to drop them. And they will lose their groups automatically. Drop user. There we go. Drop user website identified by password. Oh, drop user website. I don't need to identified by. There we go. So DB up. Let's go run this migration, make sure it works. Yep, we just created all the roles, created the users, and added them. npm run db down. Let's pull that last one down. Yep, it went and deleted all the users. npm run db up. And now we've got our users. That's perfect. Back here in our database, let's exit out of here and say memsql dash u website dash p. What's the password? Password. Use Acme. Select star from T. Nope, I don't have permission from T. Select star from show tables. I only have access to the catalog table. Perfect. Select star from catalog. Yep. Now let me say update catalog set product code equal to bad val where ID equals 1. Nope, I can't write to it. That's perfect. So we see that we're now able to log into the database correctly. We're able to do the task that we need to do. That's perfect. Now let's pivot over to using this in the website. Now our first stop in this website, let's close all the things. Shrink. In our admin site, in our login component, it just prompts for the things. And it will fire those events to go get at what it needs to. So, it's going to go post to API/auth. It's not doing anything. It's just grabbing the email and the password. So to do this authentication story, that's really in API. So here in routes, in auth, here's where we go do the things. Now we have a get method to go get the current user. That's important. Let's come back to that. But first we need to log in. Now, we're not logging in with an email anymore. We're logging in with a username. Do we want to make it pretend to be an email? I think switching over to username is probably more appropriate in this case. If we were doing an external system, then it might make sense to do email. Okay, let's move this secret gathering or grabbing the environment variable that we use for encryption up. Okay, so we want to go use the database. In effect, we want to go log in. So let's say const db equals db login. We're going to pass in the username and the password. And let's see if we get this connection. Well, what is that db login experience? Async. Well, right now in our login here in our app.ts, we do this login right at the beginning. We go grab a connection and we pass in all of the details that we need, and then that gives us that connection that we need. Okay, so let's go grab this. We still want to get the configuration data, but we're not going to use app.locals.db. Instead, let's create a new service. We'll say dblogin.ts and export async function dblogin. We'll take in a username, which is a string, and a password, which is a string. And we will return them this db. Yeah, we need to pull in some things. Let's pull in from create connection. Where is create connection coming from? There we go. Now straight off the bat, if not username or not password, return null. There is no login. And let's also say or username regex.test username. If we fail this username test, then let's do it. Now in this case, all of the usernames we're going to create this business rule are all lowercase and only letters and numbers. So let's go create this here in types. Let's create a new thing. Let's call it user.ts. Export const username regex equals. We did similar things in product to create these regexes, and A to Z, 0 to 9. In this case, we're going to do that a little bit differently. We'll just say start of the string, A to Z, 0 to 9, all the characters, end of the string. That's the regex. So if you aren't all lowercase letters and numbers, then you just can't get in. Okay, here's db login. Let's pull in username regex. Go gadget, VS Code. There we go. I'm going to give it a path there though. Types user. There we go. So if you don't have a username or you don't have a password or the username isn't there, we don't even need to try to log into the database. We just know that we're going to fail. The user is actually the username now. The password is the password. Or ESLint will tell us to just do that. That's perfect. Well, what happens if we fail? Let's say catch. Now we don't want to log in correctly, but what if we fail in other ways? Well, let's take a look at this error. Let's say console.log database login fail for username. And we'll export the error. We'll log the error, which usually is just the error message. So another trick, let's log all the properties of error as an object, and that works out pretty well. Okay, so we have this mechanism of logging in. That's perfect. Here in app, we might have been a smidge hasty to remove this, so let's put that back in for now. And here in auth, we will grab that DB login. Perfect. So there's that DB login. So if we got back a database, then we know that we're authenticated correctly. If we didn't, then we can do this. If not DB, invalid username or password. Perfect. We do want to save this user. It won't be one. Password is password. We'll log that as our token. And we do need to save the password so that we can pull it back out when you come back and request it. I don't like putting the password in the token, so let's encrypt it. So this is the JWT secret, JWT auth key. And so now let's create a secret. Const secret equals password. Now that's not encrypted, so let's keep that to encrypt it. And then we definitely don't want to return the password right there, so let's say delete user.password. Well, let's just call it user.secret. That works. Cool. Delete. Now we do need to encrypt it, but before we go there, DB login, we do want to catch the places where it errors because of a login fail. And in the case of a login fail, we don't want to throw, we want to return null. But in the case of not a login fail, we want to throw so that we know that our application will behave. Well, what is the difference here? Let's go create a test that can validate that. Now this will be an end-to-end test. Not new file, new folder, services, not services dot, rename, services, new file, db login .spec.ts. Okay, describe services db login. Jest is nice and allows us to just use that variable. Okay, so it should return null when no username passed. That's our first test. It should return null when no password passed. It should return null on auth fail, and it should return DB on auth success. Okay, so we're probably going to do a whole lot of things that are really similar. Act, assert. The cool thing is that this DB login doesn't have any dependencies. It uses this create connection. Oh, I guess it does have a create connection, but we're doing an end-to-end test, so we're okay digging straight in there. So arrange const username equals const password equals const expected, I should log in correctly. Act, let's say const db equals db login with username and password. And now I say if expected expect db to not be null, or I can just say to be truthy. That works. Else expect db to be null. db login, I'm going to need to await that, and not that. Go gadget VS Code. Control dot is so nice. There we go. Oh, that's from quite a ways away. Let's try that again. Dot dot slash, dot dot slash, dot dot slash. Okay, source. Services, db login. Now this is an integration test. It being an integration test, well, where do we get the username? Well, what we do here in this app is we go grab some things from environment variables. That seems like a really good move. Let's go grab these from environment variables. We'll say this is test admin user, and let's say test admin password. Now to go grab that username and password, we will need the same thing that this does of loading up the environment config. Now the bummer part about this is we can't unload the environment config, so can't unload environment variables. That's kind of a bummer. So this integration test isn't super clean. And yeah, that's a bummer. Let's put this at the top. Okay. Now they're asynchronous tests. I'm going to go log in correctly. Oh, this is async. Async. Wrong keyword. They're asynchronous tests. Okay, so we're now going to await this, and it says, hey, I can't pass in string or undefined. Yeah, let's loosen up this to say it could be a string or undefined. And that will allow us to do interesting things. We're already validating that if it's blank, we jump right out. But yeah, we're good. So here's that test where we expect it to be true, and we'll likely have this be exactly the same. So let's extract this out into a new method. Function, well, it's an async function. Async function do test. We'll need a username, which will be a string or undefined, and we need a password, which will be a string or undefined. And let's go do the test. Oh, we also need expected. Expected is a Boolean. Should it have worked? Now, one of the other things that we do here in our app spec is we very specifically call end on our database to close it after we're done. So let's do that here too. Now, this is a little bit problematic because if this throws, then that'll fail our test in an unusual way. So I'd like to do this after the assertion, but I need to do it always, not just if the assertion succeeds. So I'm going to put it right there. Not a great place, but act and assert. Let's say do await, do test, username, password, expected. Okay. So there's the details of that test. It should return null on auth fail. So this is bad password. when no password is passed, so this is undefined. When no username is passed, so this is undefined. And now I think we should have a good set of tests. The cool part is on auth fail, we'll get to see exactly what that authentication fail experience is, and we'll be able to trap that. So let's dig in here. cd to API, npm run test. Now we don't have a difference between end-to-end tests and unit tests in this case, so we can't super align ourselves to just the particulars, but let's see where it goes. We're definitely going to get the failure in the test that we skipped straight away, but I think we'll be okay. Go, 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 go. Is it still building? Do I have a build fail, a syntax error? Is it going to run the things? Let's see. We're getting so close. It's so cool. There we go. So there's the test that we ignored last time. That's totally fine. But here, this, we expected it to be truthy and it wasn't. Should return null when no username passed. Oh, haha, I know what we did. False. We should expect this to fail. Looks like my camera just unplugged and plugged back in. That's an interesting scenario. Okay. I hope I didn't fall off the stream. npm run test. Let's take a look at this test. Okay, so the test still failed, but now are we going to get the error that, ooh, that's not it. I'm not seeing that error crop up, but that's okay. The error, which is quite handy here, I'm going to reach into my notes. DB login. Here, that error is this. Error access denied error. So if we get an access denied, then we want to return null rather than throw. And that's that magic sauce to get it to work. Cool. So we do now have a nice integration test to validate our DB login process. And so back here then in our auth, now we have this mechanism of logging in. That's cool. Well, we do want to encrypt the username. Let's do that piece and pull that off. One of the things that log in, there we go. Simple crypto.js. So I just went Googling for a good authentication, not authentication, encryption library, and Simple Crypto, because it's also written in TypeScript, it should be able to work really easily with us. So let's import Simple Crypto. And what Simple Crypto does, which is really cool, is you say const simple crypto equals new simple crypto, and you pass in JWT auth key or any secret that you want to use to encrypt things. Now with this simple crypto, I can say simple crypto.encrypt password, and now that password will be encrypted. Now, I can't decrypt it without this JWT auth key. So in spite of the fact that the token, the JWT token itself is signed, not encrypted, the user still won't be able to get at that password. Still not great for an implementation, but since we're kind of playing with authentication here, I think this will be okay. So there's that username, there's that secret. In time, let's also harvest the roles. I think that'll be really cool. Let's do that next week to take a look at the roles that we need to pull in. So I think my camera may still be unplugged. I hope not. We did a great job today taking a look at all of the pieces of this authentication story. We were able to build up our integration tests. Nope. We were able to build up the integration tests for this login. We experimented with usernames and roles and groups in our database. And so we've got a really good start at doing authentication to actually go check with the user, or check with the database and log in with that database. We do still have some work to be able to leverage that in returning requests. And so let's look at that next week. In addition, let's see if we can dial out a user administration page so we can start to create users. Thanks for joining us on the Developer Livestream. See you next week.